Hi, my name is Tarshia Wilson. This is my interpersonal communications project for HSC 508 at Liberty University. A little bit about myself. I am a single mother of two young men. One is 20 and the other is 17. I also have a 20-year-old godson that lives with me as well as a 3-year-old wonderful, so energetic godson as well. I love them all so dearly. They are dear to my heart. They are my main focus. Another thing about me, I am the praise and worship leader for Vision of Hope Family Worship Center. And although it's in Archdale and I live in another city and it takes me a while to get there, I am dedicated and focused on doing what the Lord has called me to do. And I feel that that is where I am to be. A goal for me is to help other people. And it actually fits in line with the mission for the church, which is helping other people excel in Christ. So I want to be able to use the information from my interpersonal communications class to make that happen. Next slide, please. Interpersonal communication is defined by Stewart as a subset of communication, a type or kind of contact that happens when the people involved talk and listen in ways that maximize the presence of the personal. Next slide, please. We had to set an overarching goal for ourselves based on the information that we learned in this class, and I've decided that my goal is to become an effective communicator. Yes, I communicate each and every day with someone, but I want to make sure that my communicating is being effective, that it is bringing positive change to someone's life. Next slide, please. How to Solve the People Puzzle is the first book that we began on this quest in this class, which is by Miles Carbonell. It also accompanied the online assessments that we had to complete as well. In this, we had to answer quite a few questions to come up with our personality patterns based on the four disc model: the D, I, S, and C. In the D, it is active and task oriented. The I is outgoing and people oriented. The S is people and reserved. And the C is a passive but task oriented. Let's move along to see what it is that it came up with for me. As you can see, it is two graphs that it comes up with for you. And as you can see, I have a mask on the picture. It is because the mask, when we put on our mask, we cover who we really are to other people. We put on a mask saying this is what is expected of me. Underneath the mask is the real me. According to the Uniquely You assessment that I've taken, is saying that I am a C, as under this is expected of me. But under the graph, this is me, I am a D, and I and a C. Next slide, please. This is me. That means I'm dominant, inspiring, and cautious. This is little Katie. He has been all over the internet. You've probably seen him for yourself. If not, I suggest you go and check him out because he is inspiring. It's just a simple phrase that he says repeatedly, which is, I got it. He is determined to do this on his own without his mom helping him steady catching and holding on to him, because as we mothers, we will do, or fathers for that matter. When we see our babies looking like they're struggling, we always want to jump in and help them. But this is Caden. He, to me, is perceived as a D and an I because he is determined and he is inspiring with this one simple phrase of, I got it. Next slide, please. I hear you, but I'm not listening. This is something that I have been found guilty of doing in my personal communications, which is a problem for me. In order for me to become effective, I need to find out why I'm not really listening. I may look like I'm paying attention. I may be looking in your direction, trying to give you the eye contact, which is personally a problem for me because I don't look at people eye to eye very well. But it is something I'm working on and overcoming. Next slide, please. Dr. Ralph Nichols, his statement: the most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. The best way to understand people is to listen to them. In order for me to be able to help other people, I need to be able to understand the people. So therefore, I must learn how to listen. So I need to find out what it is that I'm doing that is distracting me, to keep me from being focused on what the person is talking to me. Next slide, please. So here we have noise pollution. We have some that are external, such as electronics, could be your cell phone going off when you're holding a conversation with someone, or it could be the television, or you're sitting there texting on social media such as YouTube, Facebook, or it could be loud noises. As you can see from the picture, I have a train on mine because that is one of my distractions, because trains constantly pass by my house. So it's very loud and it is a distraction for me, but it's something I have to overcome. A talker when they're speaking in a monotone voice. Oh, I had instructors where I've sat in the classroom and could not understand what was going on because they were talking in that monotone, and it basically I was bored. Then we have the internal. You have biased listening, perception, reception, and attention. As I mentioned, it's how we perceive certain things. Like my perception of little Caden from just watching the video of him is what I perceived of him. What are people's perceptions of me? That's what I expected, or rather what I thought that they expected of me. Next slide, please. Whole body listening. In order for me to be a better listener, here are some guidelines that I could use that would help me. Eyes. Looking at a person talking, giving them that eye contact. To me, I've actually found out, through employment, that eye contact is very important to an employer, because when you looking at them eye to eye, they feel that you are giving them your full undivided attention. If you're looking away, which is something I would do a lot, they don't really know if you're interested in what they have to say, if you care, if you really, everyone wants to be understood. Everybody wants to be heard. So we must learn to listen, which is the ears. We listen with both ears to hear. A lot of times if you're not really listening, when you're just hearing and not listening, a lot of people use the phrase in one ear, out the other, because you weren't really listening, you weren't focusing. So we have to learn to listen. Mouth. Quiet. No talking, humming, or making sounds. If we are listening, that means we should not be talking. If someone else is already talking, then we need to be listening. Conversation works both ways. One talk, one listen, then you take turns. So this is something we have to do in order to be a better listener. In order for me to be a better communicator, I must learn to listen. Hands. Quiet in lap, pockets to the side. Quiet in my lap or pockets or by my side. In other words, I don't need to be twiddling my thumbs and doing all of this, and I could be texting, messing with my phone. That's a distraction. That's keeping me from being focused on my talker. So I must learn to, keep my hands still, basically. Feet. Keep my feet quiet on the floor. I don't need to be tapping my foot on the floor. That's just a distraction to the person. It is a distraction to you, because you begin to tap, and then you get in a rhythm. Next thing you know, you may be having a song in your head, and then you off course and you off focus from the person that is talking to you, and they maybe having a real concern that they need you to just listen to them. So leave your feet on the floor. Body. Facing the speaker as if I am right now. Although I don't see you, you're looking at me through this camera, so I must look at this camera so that you will see that I'm looking at you if you was here looking at me. Brain. Think about what is being said. In other words, we got the information that they're giving us, which is, when we talk about inhaling and exhaling, we inhaling the information into our brain. We need to be processing what the speaker is saying to us before we exhale out what we have to say. So we have to use our brains and listen. Think about what is being said. Use your heart. Have a heart. That means you're caring about the person. You're caring about what they're saying to you. So if we use our whole body to listen, then we can be better communicators. We can learn to have fierce conversations with one another. That means we having an impact. We learn to enlarge our conversations this way. If we're not listening, we cannot enlarge the conversation. It's gonna stay where it's at. It's not gonna improve. It's not gonna, become something more in depth. Next slide, please. Nexting. The term nexting has been used by psychologists to refer to the propensity of people and many other animals to continually predict what will happen next in an immediate, local, or personal sense. Thinking about what's going to happen next. A lot of times when I'm listening, I get distracted because I'm listening to what's going to, take place next, or I may be preparing my next answer, but you got to be prepared. Like, how can you predict what's going to happen? This is what it is to me for nexting. I'm continually predicting, trying to predict, although we cannot always predict, but some things become predictable after a while. Next slide, please. We talked about fierce conversations. I found an anonymous source online in the British Journal, 7 principles for, having fierce conversations, which is something that we want to get to. We want to be able to have a fierce conversation with one another. So here are some guidelines, some steps that you can use, some principles to use for that. Master the courage to interrogate reality. Come out from behind yourself into the conversation and make it real. Be here, prepared to be nowhere else. Tackle your toughest challenge today. Obey your instincts. Take responsibility for your emotional weight. Let silence do the heavy thinking. To add to number 6, take responsibility for your emotional weight. I will discuss that further, that the unknown author added. For a leader, there is no trivial comment. Learning to deliver the message without the baggage allows you to speak with clarity, conviction, and compassion. Remember, the conversation is not about the relationship. The conversation is the relationship. This is something that we did hear throughout our reading, that the conversation is the relationship. Next slide, please. If we take all of these things to become a better listener, we can have a bigger impact on our communications. I think that in order for me to be an effective listener, I need to take into account the personality pattern that that was found on Carbonell's uniquely used site, where I can take those things that are, based on my personality blend and use that, as well as learning my listening style, and use those things that are noise pollutions and find solutions to those pollutions. Like if I'm talking to someone, all of these hand gestures, I need to learn to put them aside when they're talking to me, so I can be, have their full undivided attention on them. I can learn to, do the eye contact. I know that's probably one of the hardest ones for me, but that is something that I'm willing to work on in order for me to reach my goal. Self-disclosure, like I did in the beginning of the video, when I actually gave something of myself, which is something that I'm working on. I'm making strides to it. In fact, this video is a first step for me, because I was, giving information about myself, giving of myself. Normally I'm reserved and don't speak much about myself. They usually have to find out on their own rather than me, telling people during conversations. I'm more of, supposed to be the listener, the apparent listener, although I really wasn't listening. I was hearing them talk. I listen like sometimes on the level 3, listening in spurts, or sometimes the level 2. I'm nodding in agreement with them, but I'm not really listening to them. I hear some of what grabs my attention, what's important to me, what I think is important. But if I learn to do all of these things, I can learn to have fierce conversations, which also helps me reach my goal of being an effective communicator. Because if I'm listening, I can have understanding of that person, and if it's something that I need to give advice for, I can't, after they're done having their say, but I can't just give advice as soon as they start talking, because that's not what they're asking for at times. Sometimes they only want you to just listen to them, because they sometimes want to just solve their own problems. So I have to be just that, be a listener. Next slide, please. My action plan to become a more effective listener, I am going to begin to use the talker listener card that was presented in Peterson, that will teach me and remind me to not talk when someone is talking to me. So I remember not to interrupt, because it's not my turn to talk. I'm going to look them directly in the eye, and I am going to listen. Another thing that I've picked up on that would be helpful in my listening would be to repeat. If I didn't hear you and I need clarity of what you're saying, I'm going to ask you to repeat what you said. This way that I can make sure that we're on the same page, that we're talking about the same subject and we're headed in the right direction, or that we're on one accord. In order for me to be more effective, I need to learn to be a good listener. So that is my goal to obtain, to be an effective communicator. So therefore I must learn to listen, pay attention. I need to stop, look, and listen. Stop talking, look them in the eye, and listen with my whole body, not just one ear, because it takes 2 ears and the whole body to listen. Matthew 6:33 says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." So I will take that, when I go to God in prayer, I want to be in fellowship with him when I'm in prayer. If I be in fellowship in fellowship with the Lord. Learn to listen. If I learn